Had some time. It's Brigham Avery. Welcome back, Brig.
Joey, it is so great to be here, brother. Thank you for having me. It's always lovely to see your handsome face. And Cub playoff fever, Bears just kicking off. Get into it, baby.
Such a pleasure to have you back on the show. We also have a very, very special guest here. Now, this gentleman, he doesn't deserve my introduction, but I'm going to do the best that I possibly can. He is legendary Chicago actor, legendary artist, legendary Chicago sports fan. What can I just say? This man is a legend himself. It's Joe Mantegna. Joe, welcome so much to the show. How are you today?
My pleasure, Joey. I'm excellent. Great to be here.
Fantastic. Well, gentlemen, we're going to get you started right away here. Chicago Cubs right now coming into action, fighting for that third playoff spot. They picked up a win last night against the Pittsburgh Pirates, 13-1. The Bats came alive once again after going 2-8 in Arizona. Brigham, man, let's start with you first, my friend. How are you feeling going into this weekend? We got Pirates, we got Rockies, and then Braves, Brewers, and hopefully October baseball. How's your emotional state right now?
My emotional state is very good after last night. It's great because I'm here in Chicago out in front of Clark Street Sports. I have my Cubs Ivy shirt on. We're right behind the stadium itself, sending all the good vibe and karma to the Cubs. And I feel as though the bats are out of the deep freeze. The real problem is the bats collectively went in the deep freeze. They had a lot of problems with their bullpen. I feel now as though they can ride this wave and get back. I'm not trying to sound like Vic the Brick Jacobs or too positive, but I do feel as though, in essence, I had to throw a little LA reference of sportscasting, but I feel, Joey, as though they're ready to take the next step, turn the table, and really get back at those Rockies. Those two losses in Colorado and the way they lost in Arizona was very demoralizing, and they haven't lost a lot of games like that this year where the bullpen blew it. The bats just went in the deep freeze for that extended period of time. So getting back on track, I feel with the ebbs and the flows of baseball that I like what's happening, and I feel as though this is their time to get back. And, there's some things against them. I know the injuries and so on and so forth, but I'm just feeling it, and I think that these two series are going to be good. And I like the fact that the Braves, this is the last thing I'll say for now, the Braves have clinched, so they will be in relax mode. They'll probably be arresting a lot of their starters when we go to that final three series. And perhaps hopefully the Brewers will be too if they win the division. So I feel as though these are 12 games that are looking like they could be majority of winnable games for the Cubs. So.
Brigham Avery, beacon of hope, right down there in Wrigleyville right now, giving us the live report. Joe, I wanted to ask you, look, man, you've seen more Cubs baseball than I could probably fit into my own brain or onto my two hands here. Besides the win total this season, what has perhaps surprised you or maybe delighted you the most about the Chicago Cubs team this year?
Well, to me, I'm just delighted that, as you said, they're trying for a playoff spot. You got to understand, I've been a Cub fan since the early 50s, and so whenever I hear the term, well, they're fighting for a playoff spot, it's like, wow, that's a term I had. We used to count that off in decades. Like, no, we never were fighting for a playoff spot in that decade, or how about this decade? Well, that decade was kind of a tough one too. Oh, and maybe this one is not even that really good either. So, you have to understand, I'm excited by all of it. After 2016, it's all gravy for me. You know what I mean? It's like my mother passed away at 101, and that was just maybe 6-8 months after the Cubs won that series. And I remember doing publicity during that 2016 season, saying things on shows like this, saying, boys, close the deal. My mother is 100 years old, and the Cubs were on an 8-year losing streak when she was born, back in 1915. So in other words, it's all gravy for me. So you're asking me what's exciting? It's all exciting. It's all great. Yeah. They're fighting for a playoff spot. For me, I'm already, I'm already somewhat satisfied. Let's see where it takes us.
May I follow up and ask, where were you for the 2016 World Championship?
I was in the parking lot of our restaurant called Taste Chicago at the time, which was a restaurant we had in Burbank, California for 16 years. I had an option to go to Cleveland. The Cubs even offered me tickets to go to Cleveland, and I know a lot of celebrity friends of mine were there, Bonnie Hunt and Bill Murray and others, Eddie Vedder. But I thought to myself, first of all, it was a Thursday. I was still filming Criminal Minds. My next day was going to be a work day. I would have to have arranged that. I thought I'd be leaving all of the fans who have been watching all the games at our restaurant, at that point, at every game, our restaurant was jammed with Cub fans because our restaurant was called Taste Chicago. So there was that reason. And the third reason was if they lost, I would be in Cleveland on a Thursday night. I want to kill myself, So I said, no, you know what? I'm going to hedge my bets. and I'm just going to spend it the reason I said I was in the parking lot, I was so nervous I couldn't watch the end of the game in the restaurant with all of the patrons because I just thought, I've been burned too many times. I'm going to watch it in the news truck with the guys that were broadcasting the game. And so I watched the last couple innings by myself, looking at a little monitor in the news truck. And what was interesting is when that final out, when Rizzo caught that ball for the out, I slammed open the door of the truck and looked back at the restaurant, and it was dead silence. It was like, and I thought, I'm dreaming. It was a dream. I dreamt it all. It didn't happen. And then I look over, and the guy next to me, who could care less, he's a guy working for the network. He's spinning dials. He looks at me and goes, "Oh yeah, we're on a 15-second delay." And I was like, okay. And then, of course, the restaurant erupted. People are running out the door. And I'm thinking, well, the good news is I wasn't in Cleveland, but outside of being there, I found out 15 seconds before anybody else that the Cubs won the World Series.
Breaking news. Breaking news.
Right. Breaking news.
In the parking lot, Andy Mazer in the truck. Yeah, it wouldn't have been easy probably catching a cab in Cleveland after that game if you had Cubs gear on, that's for sure.
No cab. I need an ambulance. I would need an ambulance.
and Brigham weighed on this because I'll be honest with you. I was we're all Cubs fans, so we maybe understand this. I legitimately thought when they went to extra innings, I thought it was going to go to 18 to 20 innings, and we may not see the conclusion of that game until dawn. I mean, Brigham, I was ready.
That was very plausible.
How are you feeling?
I will tell you something.
More Cubby way to do it, yeah.
I was not invited to Cleveland, however, by the Cubs. However, I will tell you that in essence, gentlemen, and Joe can attest to this, with the essence of our show, Hollywood and Ivy, is really L.A. and Chicago. It's a combination of sports fans and movie stars. And the thing that's great about living in Southern California is, as opposed to Chicago, when the Cubs, the Bears, Notre Dame loses, I first moved there when Notre Dame got knocked off by Northwestern. I know you know that game, September 2nd, 1995. And I was in LA and I thought, God, I'm just going to go to the beach and this isn't so bad. So I understand why Joe stayed because, you go to Newport Beach and everything, you'd be fine. You wash away the Cub pain. But now all that's lost is found. So the great thing about this show, just to spur into that, is that when we talk about, and Joe, everybody says this, and Joe, everybody says this, they say, thank God they won that in 2016 because Brig asks every guest about that. They all have an amazing story like Joe's, and it is all valuable and beautiful, and it's all your inner child healed. And just the essence of everything it's like, surreal, very surreal. So, that's, I got off on a tangent, but thanks for letting me go.
No, that's perfect. I mean, like you did the transition for me, my man. That's what makes you a great host, my friend. We're here with Brigham Avery and Joe Mantegna here on Betting on Chicago. Joe, please, I know you've heard this question before, but just for my audience, please indulge us. What was the impetus to start Hollywood and Ivy? Talk a little bit about the show, and also maybe if you guys want to start to preview some of the great things you guys have in store, because I'm a huge fan of the show. I love hearing the stories, and people need to check it out wherever they are in the country.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Brig and I had a little bit of a history. He would come back when we had that restaurant. He would come in and we'd do some things there, things related to not just the Cubs, but sports and other things. And so he actually broached me with the idea. He says, I've got this idea for a show, Hollywood and Ivy, where we bring celebrity Cub fans together with, talk about their fandom. And I was well aware of the fact, I'll give you an example, how when I was on the Kennedy Center committee for many years. And so the one year you take a bus from the White House to the Kennedy Center, those of you who were on the committee, to see the show that night. And it was that particular year was the year they were honoring Bruce Springsteen. Well, I happened to be on the bus with Eddie Vedder. And as soon as I sat down on the bus, because you're all scared, it's all random. You're just going to take the bus ride to Secret Service once you all go together to the event. I sit next to Eddie and I look at Eddie and he looks at me and I said, "You're a Cub fan, aren't you?" Basically, he says, "Yeah, you're a Cub fan too, right?" And so we turned into 10-year-olds and we both started just and I'm thinking when it was all done and we left, we said, "Hey Eddie, I'll see you, man. Go Cubs!" And I'm thinking, wow, here he is. Here I am, the actor. Here he is, the rock and roll star. And what we bonded on was that. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so I think that says it all there. And so when Brig came up with this idea for Hollywood and Ivy, I was all in because I thought, yes, I know we're going to have no trouble getting people to participate because we're going to be tapping into something that's not about their day job. I'm an actor. That's what I do for my day job. You're tapping into what I've been doing since I've been 5 years old. That's a little different. And so that's been fun about it, wonderful about it. And that's what turns, when you have somebody like Billy Corgan on and you're talking to him and he's like all excited, like he's, at the game with his grandmother. It's like fantastic,
Yeah, well,
Yeah, Billy Corgan actually shed tears a little bit. He cried about when he talked about Randy Hundley, and you saw this on the episode. Randy Hundley met his grandmother, and it was like 1973, and she started crying and hugged him when Billy Corgan was a little kid. And 35 years later, Randy Hundley had a chance to go to a Smashing Pumpkins concert, and whoever Randy Hundley's friend called Billy Corgan and said, "Hey, I've got Randy with me. Can I bring him to the concert?" And backstage, Billy's like, "Absolutely." And when they saw each other, they talked about that. And Randy's like, "I'm sorry, I don't remember that." And Billy's like, "You know what? It doesn't matter." And at that point, it doesn't matter what you did for my grandmother made you that day. You're the first class person to me. So he speaks about it like it just happened yesterday.
Yeah, Joey. That's why we do the show. That's the beauty of the show for me. Exactly.
And honestly, I think that's the power of sports, and I think that's what you guys are trying to bring through the show, right? Is that no matter who you are, no matter what walk of life it is, when we talk about where you were in 2016, we all came together to watch the team in the sport that we love. And whether you are Mr. World is a Vampire or whatever it is, we can all kind of bond over that thing. Joe, just really quick, has 2016, the World Series, has that replaced, like when you're talking about the sweet spot of talking about the Cubs, is it still Wrigley? Is it Ernie Banks? Is it Santo? Or is 2016 replaced it? Where do you like to go right away when you turn into the 10-year-old? Yeah, the child in me will never disappear, and that's why when I just threw out the first pitch again here in over Memorial Day weekend, anybody who saw it, the numbers I had two numbers on my back. They asked, "What number you want on your back?" I said, "I want number 14/10." Ernie Banks, Ron Santo. I said, you know what I mean? Cubs could win the World Series for the next 10 years in a row, and it's not going to take away the child in me that goes back to, those were my boys. Those were my boys, and I wouldn't want it to be any different for any other fan as well. You live in the time that you embrace that team. That's what nostalgia is all about, and that's what it goes to even the op-ed page I wrote for the New York Times back on for the New York Times. I wrote the op-ed page for the first Cubs night game, because the New York Times contacted me, thought I'd be a fitting one to write that. And I basically, in essence, said that's what nostalgia is. It's like, I remember Wrigley Field with no lights, but that's okay. If my kids could care less. They love that's their nostalgia is something different. It's good that we all are compartmentalized. The three of us right now have different memories of being a Cub fan, and that's good. If it was all the same thing, it'd be boring, Yeah, no, me and Brigham probably bemoan about the Taco Bell being gone. That's our new one. I'm right
near that right now, Joey. I'm right behind where that was. And I'm at the place, Joe, where they made the 14 and 10 jersey, Clark Street Sports. I will tell you guys, now that we're into this, my sentimental value of the Cubs was the 85 Cubs. Not a lot of people remember that team because all five starting pitchers, Rick Sutcliffe, Dennis Eckersley, Scott, they all went on the DL. But that team started so hot. They were so good. They actually lost 13 games in a row. They lost after 84. They lost. They were a great team. But I remember being in Chicago that year, and watching game after game and just falling in love with WGN, Harry Carey, the way they remember Murph in 76, Go with the Spirit, the way they just painted the picture and the way that Harry Carey was everywhere. That, even though the team was losing and it was the year after 84, that made me fall in love with the Cubs. You just branded them in my mind, and the blue and the red and the colors and everything.
In 84, when the Cubs lost that playoff game to San Diego, that night, I was on Broadway doing the play Glengarry Glen Ross, the play that I won the Tony Award for, the show that had won the Pulitzer Prize. I took the curtain call that night. As I walked out, I pulled out of my back pocket a Cubs hat, and I put it on. And I'll never forget it, because I thought to myself, I wanted to do that to show they're not going to kill me. They're not going to get me down here. And so what was great is the New York audience, there was a huge cheer went up, and then all of a sudden they started booing me because I think they started to realize, wait a minute, he's a Cub fan. Wait, what the hell do we care that the Cubs lost? But I loved it. But I did it as a sign of protest because all the newspapers were calling me, the magazines. Hey, what do you think? The Cubs blew it. The Cubs lost. And I was so down. I thought, I'm going to make a statement tonight. So that night on Broadway, I wore a Cubs hat at the curtain call.
Nobody messes with Ricky Roma. Come on.
That's right. I took the hat off and I threw it in the audience too. I said, hopefully a Cub fan got it.
So mine is number 8, Mr. Hawk. Andre Dawson right there.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm a WGN kid for the early 90s. So I grew up on Jim Bollinger and Kevin Foster, but I still became a Cubs fan nonetheless. So I don't know what that says about me, but it says a little something about the power of Wrigley Field, the north side. We got just a couple minutes here left with Brigham Avery, Joe Mantegna. Brigham, I promised you, man, it's a big weekend for Notre Dame. The Irish
Oh, yeah,
playing
but
Ohio State.
first of all, we talk about happy days. This is not Joni Loves Chachi, but we have a Bears show.
Oh, please.
Hollywood and Hallis coming up.
Break it.
That's going to be, right, Joe? That's going to be even – it's just going to be a special because the passion of the Bears, the 63 Bears, the 85 Bears, all that's going to be captured. George Wendt is our first guest. We got, and what we can do then, just to tell you, Joe knows this better, is the White Sox fans who might not be Cubs fans can be Bears fans on our show because everyone in this city is a Bears fan. This is the number one NFL market.
That's right.
Because
that's right.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So
hey, I go back. I was even a Cardinals fan back then. The Chicago Cardinals were playing. They were playing in Comiskey back then. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But always the Bears were number one. Cardinals were.
Yeah.
So you actually know good Bears quarterback play then, Joe. You've actually seen it. You've witnessed it.
Yeah. If you're going to consider Ed Brown and Zeke Bratkowski, as being, we'll take it. Exactly.
Hollywood and Hallis coming. Do you guys have a release date yet? Are you still shooting it right now?
No, we're because of just everything that's going on. We're going to film an episode, and then we'll be following up about that. But that's coming soon, and we can't wait for that too, buddy. So just wanted to mention that, and let's get into the Irish now, shall we?
Do it. Give us some Irish here. Tell us how they're going to take down Kyle McCord this weekend.
So, Joe, Notre Dame plays Ohio State this weekend. Joey, it's going to be very intense. The Buckeyes come into South Bend, and they started the year last year in 2022 with a loss. They were physically dominated where the Irish. I think it's going to be a different story. It's going to be unique because Notre Dame is now good, and they're playing at home. They play big games at home, and I think what's underrated, the hidden factor here, Joey, is the fact that they play well at home. And just ask Clemson that, the 2020 Tigers, the 2022. So that's become a home field advantage again at night in South Bend. So the Buckeyes are a -3 favorite. I think that's understandable, knowing their history, but I do look for Notre Dame to come and win this game, and I think we can't deny this. If Sam Hartman, the Irish quarterback, has a great game, he gets an invitation to New York for that. He's in the top 5 of the Heisman. So I look for those things to happen. I like Notre Dame about 34-28. And that's what I have to say about that, brother.
Love it. And last Saturday, I said that, I directed this play. I'm not a comedian. I'm Lenny Bruce, and the writer star of it is a guy named Ronnie Marmo. Huge Notre Dame fan. He went to Indiana specifically for 2 things: to go to James Dean's the museum there, and I happen to know the curator there, so I set him up with that. And he's a huge Notre Dame fan and wanted to see the game. I'm a dear friend of Pete Chiavarelli, who owned Demon Dogs all those years in Chicago, and is also, of course, the manager of the band Chicago. And I called Pete, and Pete was so gracious, treated Ronnie to like a Notre Dame fan's dream day in South Bend. So last Saturday was like, I was so happy to be able to make that happen for Ronnie, and so glad that Notre Dame came through and so hats off to my dear friend Pete Chiavarelli and the band Chicago and all that.
And if
that's an amazing play.
They come through this weekend, Brigham, and take down Ohio State and turn this Big Ten upside down.
Absolutely, Joe. Here's the other thing, Joe. Why don't you? Joe Mantegna is everywhere, undeniable. The man is in every essence. Tell Joey whose mail you get, whose mail you used to get for years, Joe.
Well, I used to get Joe Montana's mail. The point is, I'd get his and he'd get mine. We finally talked about it because one time I was doing a movie and there was a knock on the trailer door and I opened it up and a kid's standing there with a football because somebody had told him, "Hey, they're making a movie here. Who's in it?" "Oh, Joe Mantegna's in it." Of course, the kid ran home and got the football. No, there was even a thing. Somebody sent me a blurb just a couple days ago. It was a college game. I forget which 2 teams were playing, and it said, and for talking about the quarterback, it said in the first half he played like Joe Mantegna, in the second half he played like Joe Mantegna. And I thought, amazing. Okay, that's good. I'm forever going to be at least I'm forever tied to one of the greatest quarterbacks who ever lived, and he's Italian on top of it. So I'm all. I was going to say,
if you start getting confused with Joe Manganiello, then now we're
no. Me and Joe Montana, it's all good. I'm happy to have that association.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah.
Oh, two amazing careers. Just to get you guys out of here, thank you so much for joining the show. And Joe, thank you so much for being so generous with your time.
My pleasure, Joey.
Honestly, you teased it. You teased it just a little bit. But my background is obviously I'm born and raised in Chicago. theater kid, comedy, Second City.
What, a Greek guy from Chicago? How weird is that, huh?
Who would have thought? Who would have thought?
Never.
And the honestly, growing up, one of the great myths, one of the great lores was that first iteration of Glengarry Glen Ross and Robert Prosky and you and the cast.
Right.
And so that was going to be my secret, kind of fanboy question is, if you can use your five senses or something, what is one of the, like, when you think about it right now, what is the first thing that kind of comes to your mind, maybe emotionally, about that time in your life?
Wow. Well, it changed my life, and all I can say is, God bless David Mamet, because here's a guy I'd known for, still know for over 50 years. And here's a guy that in true Chicago style, he followed through. In other words, his career was taken off at that point. He could have very easily decided to, hey, I've got this new play going to Broadway. Let's fill it up with all kinds of stars and all things like that. But he fought to get, to make it a show that would use the kind of actors he wanted to have in those certain roles. And he has told me that, I was somewhat, in his head, I guess, when he created that character of Ricky Roma. And so to be able to follow through on that, and for me to be able to participate in it and do something where basically by being in that play, it's career-wise, without question, changed my life. I mean, I went from for 15 years of being a working actor to a guy who's in a Pulitzer Prize winning play, who's won the Tony Award for it, and went on to do, of course, many other things with David as well, besides people like Coppola and Barry Levinson and Woody Allen, and changed my career, my career, life. So that's what I remember. 1983, 84. That was a period of time that. At least career-wise, I couldn't have written a better script for myself. Could have written a better one for the Cubs in '84, but that's all.
Leon Durham, stage direction, skips through the legs.
What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do?
Heartbreak. I just love to hear that. My first audition in Chicago was actually for a little film called Uncle Nino to play the bully.
Oh,
I did
great.
not get it at the time, but it was my first time stepping into a room and slating, and I always just had that connection with you back in the day, which was really great. So, and Brigham, before we get out of here, Cubs gonna get in? We sneaking in? We talking in October?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're getting in. They're getting in.
Okay.
And it's been so great to be here, Joey. Thank you for having us, man. Amazing.
Guys,
yeah, really great, Joey.
Such a great pleasure. No, the pleasure was all mine, you guys. Thank you so much for taking the time. You guys have no idea how big of a fan I am of not just Hollywood and Ivy, but soon to be Hollywood and Hallis too as well, that you can check out on the Marquee Network. Also check them out on YouTube, guys. If you don't have the Marquee Network, make sure you check it out. Be well, be safe. Please be good to each other. Have a wonderful day, and thank you for tuning in this episode.